Hey, welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Sabbath to
Welcome,
so many.
welcome.
Yes. We're just so excited to be here
Yes,
with
yes,
you.
yes.
So Pastor
At the
Dion, how are
Pastors
you doing?
Roundtable.
Hey man, listen, it's this
Li-
is this is interesting.
Listen, this is it. You know what? I feel like we're missing somebody today. That's how I
you,
feel, man.
you
We're
don't have
missing.
to feel it, man. We can see it and we know it. We can see it and know it. We are just so glad that you can still be a part of us. As you see, we have one of our hosts is missing, Pastor Paul. Unfortunately, he had to deal with a funeral today, and so
Yes.
he is actually on the road heading to minister to that family. And he said to us, "Listen, guys, y'all gonna have to handle it." And I said, "Oh my goodness, what are we gonna do?"
We're getting nervous, man.
Oh man, I
We're
was
getting
on pins
nervous.
and needles all night. But we praise God.
Oh
He
my.
taught us well. I'm gonna say that much. He taught us well.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Listen, this week I was doing a week of spiritual emphasis for my church.
Hmm.
The emphasis was called Almost Home. And so Sunday night, oh man, it was just rocky. Things were happening. I did the two screen setup and I was in both screens. You know what I mean? So, but it got better and better and better. And my hat goes out to Pastor Paul, just trying to help us along.
I'm
But
telling you,
we do have a show today though.
we sh-
He said let's continue, so we're gonna continue.
we're gonna continue. Listen. Before we get started, I want you to do us a favor to all of our viewers that are out there. Please share this this show. Please don't forget to do
Yeah.
that. If there's a show that you may not want to share, it might be this one. But no. I'm just kidding. We have
Yeah,
put some time and
no.
energy into it. Share the show. Share the show. Share the show. We need your help in sharing the show today. We are just excited that God is blessing. Still, even as we get this close to the season of for the reason for the season, we are just so glad that we
Yes.
can come and be with you today. So, as you know, our one of our co-hosts is not with us, but still, we feel his presence. He's listening to us, and so, Pastor Paul, thank you
Thank
for
you.
believing in us that we can carry on without you.
Thank you for. We're gonna see at the end of the show if we're able to do it. But I think we're in good hands
Yes,
today. Good hands.
yes,
Hey, by the
yes.
way, before we go on, we do want to tell our listening viewers or our viewers that are listening out there that we do have a website. We do have a website, and we want you to keep that in mind about our website, where we're trying to resource it. We're trying to make sure that all the things that we've talked about on the show. I think I hear an echo somewhere. There's an
Mm,
echo
I am not
somewhere
hearing
on this.
one.
Yeah, I think I hear one. But listen, I guess I'm just listening to myself backwards, right? I mean, again, but that's where all of our resources go to on the website, because we don't want you to miss this information. And Raj, our guests that we've been having, they've been sharing a lot of great material, things that we could go back to.
Yeah.
They've shared us websites, and there's just a lot of things to keep up with. So that's why the website was there, created so that we can actually resource anyone that wants to know more information about any of the topics that we've discussed.
So you can go to www.thepastorsroundtable.com, and you will be able to access the resource. You'll be the website, and you'll be able to see all the shows that we've done in the past. You'll be able to link to that. You'll be able to even contribute. Maybe there's something that's happening in your area, in your situation. You'll be able to contribute through the website, and there'll be a plethora of information that's going to be shared. We're building it up, we're loading it up as we speak. And also, don't forget, during the week, we have what is called discussion bites. That's right, discussion bites that are being shared through the social media platform. And so we're just so thankful for this medium in which God has allowed us to share in this ministry. So,
All
Pastor
right. And
Henry,
so we
I'm sorry.
Talk to me. No, talk to me.
Now, I was going to say, Pastor Henry, we know that our time always gets away from us. So I wanted to have you pray and then begin the discussion for today. Share with us what's on the table today.
All right, well, let's pray and then we'll begin. Lord, you blessed us to be a part of this ministry, and what a wonderful ministry, God. We ask, Lord, that the guests that we have that are willing to share with us some practical ways of ministry to be effective, we ask, Lord, that we will receive it and that our viewers will also receive it so that we can just be the type of people you want us to be as we look forward to your second coming. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen. All right. Awesome. Awesome. So, Dr. Henry, what's on the table today?
All right. Well, listen, on the table, we are talking about standout churches. That's what we're dealing with today. And I'm just elated about this topic because we know during the pandemic, a lot of things happened, but there's some churches that emerged.
That's right. That's right. They're doing different things. It's not like they're all doing the same thing, and that's the beauty about this pandemic. A lot of people are talking about the fact that the pandemic has allowed individuals to shine. I'm not in a bad way, but in a way of getting their skills and talents out there. Even what we're doing now, this was not what we went to school for. This was not what we started out doing. But God has allowed us to try our hand at something else.
Listen, and you're not lying. You know, we went to school to divide the word. That's why we went to the school. We went to school to learn how to manage churches, but we've been thrown into this thing.
I'm
And
telling
but
you.
God's been good. God
Yes.
has just been good. And these churches have been just standing out. So we talked about what's on the table, but who's at the table,
Wow.
Pastor
Well,
Ray?
today we felt that we normally we bring on workers from the church because of the structure of what we are doing, but today we went right to the church. We went right to where it's happening, right in where it's happening. So we have with us three individuals. One is a pastor, Pastor Reggie Guerriere from the Bethany Seventh-day Adventist Church in Westbury, New York. And he brought with him his communications director, Tiffany Daniels, who will be with us. And then, oh, I think this is such a great treat for us today. We have the assistant communications director for the Cadillac Seventh-day Adventist Church in Cadillac, Michigan, Samuel Grevin. And we're just excited to have Samuel with us because not only is he a communications director, but he's also the group, the part of the group that we're trying to reach. And so he is not just being part of the problem; he's part of the solution. And so we're just so glad to have him and Tiffany and Pastor Guerriere with us today. So, guys, we are just excited to have you with us. What we normally do, we just introduce you, kind of where you are, kind of stuff. But we want you to take a moment to introduce yourself, share with us something that we may not know about, or you would like us to know about you. We'll give you. We'll start with Tiffany, and Tiffany will give you about 40 seconds. 40 seconds to share with us a little bit about who Tiffany Daniel is. Okay, did she freeze on us?
Maybe Tiffany
Oh, I see a little
having
movement.
something
Tiffany, go
mute.
ahead if you can. Unmute and okay. So while Tiffany's getting it together, we will move to Pastor Reginald Guerriere. Pastor, share with us. Because you're a preacher, you know, we have a thing on the show here that preachers can take it, take it a little long. So we're going to give you
We can't give him 40 seconds.
35 seconds. 35 seconds.
That's right.
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to thank you, brethren, for the wonderful job that you're doing, just highlighting God's goodness and the amazing things that He's been doing with and through our churches, even during a pandemic. We congratulate, salute you, and it's an honor to be part of the round table. I'm Pastor Reginald Guerrier. I have the awesome honor and privilege of pastoring the Bethany Seventh day Adventist Church, a dynamic, gifted church, one of, if not our best church, I believe, here in the Northeastern Conference of Seventh day Adventists. And it's an honor and privilege to be here with you.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, thank you. Tiffany, are you ready? Are you able to talk at this one?
I think so. Can
There
you
you
hear
go.
me?
Yeah, we hear you. All right.
Yeah, we hear you.
All right, Tiffany. We'll give us a little bit about you and what you'd like us to know about you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I am the communications director at Bethany, and I assumed the role earlier this year during COVID. My background is in project management. And yeah, it was an honor to serve in this capacity, particularly during COVID.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you for being here. We're looking forward to hearing all the little secret sauces that you have that makes it work there at Bethany.
Yes.
And Sam, hey man,
Awesome.
we're so glad to
Right.
have you. You were given a shout out at one of our earlier shows, and so we said we got to track Sam down. Sam, share with us. You got 40 seconds. Share with us something about Sam, where you are, a little bit about you.
Well, my name is Samuel Gervin. I'm from Cadillac, Michigan, and I am the Assistant Communications Secretary at the Cadillac Seventh-day Adventist Church. My director is Tom Najur, and he works with Strong Tower Radio here in Michigan.
Mm.
And I am 13. I'm still a student. I don't have any formal education in communications or anything of that nature. So I'm just here, and I'm glad to be here, and I'd like to thank you for allowing me on here.
Awesome, 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 man. You hit the unique thing that I'm excited about, being your age, and we'll get to that a little
Yeah,
later on in our discussion. But I'm
that's
just so
right.
excited. So, guys, we have introduced our guests. We've got to know them a little bit. We'll get to know them more as we talk. Keep sharing that, hitting that share button.
Yes.
Put your questions in the chat. We're looking forward to connecting. Dr. Henry, take it away.
All right. Well, again, I echo what Raj said, Pastor Wade. Just privileged to have you on the show. We're looking forward to this conversation, and we're going to start off again. You know, we're in this pandemic. We do see a light at the end of the tunnel, but during the pandemic, the churches, many church, in fact, all churches, were challenged to meet mission and provide congregational care because we just had to do things differently. Things were not as normal. And so we had to eliminate in-person contact in a lot of areas, especially at the beginning, where we couldn't even get into the building. And so for the most part, the church has changed. So in what ways has your church specifically changed from March to the present? We want to start off with Sam. What ways has your church specifically changed from March until the present, and also your role in the church?
Well, you talked about this pandemic. This pandemic has brought a lot of challenges. We weren't able to meet in person for the better part of 4 months. We're back in person now, but before then, we were not a very online-focused church. We were able to stream our services and do things of that nature, but we did not cater specifically to people online. Now we have, this COVID thing has brought us to the realization that we need to cater to these people that are online. There are people who won't come to church because they aren't able to. There are people that are self-isolating, and we need to be able to target those people. So we've been able to build an online following and grow our online services and do things that normally you wouldn't do online. Like, we were able to put 18 hours of content on Sabbaths and Friday nights before during this while we were shut down. Now we've scaled that back now because we're back in person. But and about the role, the role hasn't changed a lot. We've had to manage these things for the better part of a year now, at least I have. And the only part that's changed is that we had to produce a lot of online driven content, and that was a
Mm,
challenge at first. But after a lot of trial and error, it turned out to be really, really good.
Okay. Before we get to the Tiffany and Pastor Greer, so what is your role at the church? I think you said your age is 13 years old.
Hmm.
Okay, you're 13 years old, but you have a major role in that church. Tell me what you do. What do you do in the church?
Well, I work with Tom Mature with Strong Tower Radio, and he's also my director. And we do a lot. We work with the press. We write press releases. We send them to the press. We work with trying to gain visibility in the press. We've been able to cultivate a relationship with the press, and we manage the social media. At least I do a lot of it, and we also manage the website. And we do a lot of anything that happens to do with online with our church. We manage that, and it's a privilege to do that.
Wow, wow. And you've been doing that for how long?
I've been doing that since about July of last year.
Mm.
Okay, so when you were 12, you started this.
Yeah.
Wow. That that's the way you just wow. That's all I got to say. Wow. Oh man, tremendous ministry. Tremendous ministry. I looked online and I saw the Bethany Church, and I am just amazed about what you're doing at the Bethany Church. And so that's the way we called up Pastor Greer. We said, listen, we got to talk with you. We got to see what your church is doing. We got to know what's going on behind the scenes, because your church is just flourishing, one of the standout churches. And Pastor Greer immediately said, listen, you got to bring my person on, Tiffany, because Tiffany is a critical part of what this church is doing. So let me just go with Tiffany. Please, we're pleased to have you on the show. March, church changed. How has the Bethany Church changed?
So just like Sam said, everything we were not catered to working with folks online or ministering to people online. It was always a face-to-face interaction every week. And so we had to turn almost everything over, starting from
Mm,
scratch, because we essentially did not have um, a robust system already set in place. So we had to, like Sam said, create digital content. We had to establish um, a rapport with those who are on social media, Instagram and Facebook, and then utilizing our YouTube channel in order to reach folks who are well outside of our immediate area, within the first few miles of our neighborhood. And we're based in New York, so
mhm.
I'm sorry, I can hear myself talking. um, so we're based in New York. So for a long time, we were the epicenter, and we couldn't meet in person, and we had to find a way to remain, stay on.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
I think we said the same time.
Pastor Gary, you want to jump in at this point?
Sure, absolutely. Tiffany, I'm glad she came on with us. She could talk more about the process, the specifics of what we were able to do. But I want to talk about the backdrop, sort of like the context and how we were able to come together and get our church on board. Bethany, as you know, Pastor Wade is known for, an amazing worship service that it's been able to put on. I say that humbly. I was able to come into the church, and it was like that when I got there. It's just one of those churches that did praise and worship at a very high level. I think before the pandemic, we reached a point where we started to think we were plateauing a little bit. There wasn't too much more to do in terms of traditional worship service in the building. We had kind of reached a certain level, and as I said, that was the case before I got there. However, so there was this feeling of what's next? What can we do to kind of expand our ministry? And then COVID hit, And I think that gave us the latitude, the openness. I think that's the key word. Our church was at that point open, because before COVID, we had a sense that there was more we needed to do. There was some expanding that our services kind of was ready for. And COVID just gave us the opportunity to come together and to say we need to really pour into our online ministry. We need to really support the giftedness that people like Tiffany possess. And I think willingness was the key. I was able to say, listen, we're going back to the drawing board. Let's reimagine church. We had a vision set for 2020. Obviously, COVID came in and sort of allowed us to rearrange things. And so we just had a theme, 2020 vision reimagined. Our board was on board, no pun intended, and we were able to allow the giftedness of our communications people, tech people, to sort of lead us through this pandemic.
Wow, excellent, excellent. Listen, a professor of economics at the University of San Francisco and research affiliated at the University of Notre Dame suggested that while the pandemic created a new array of challenges, and that was alluded to as you shared, all three of you shared, it has also opened up a plethora of opportunities. I know there's a leadership guru that talks about challenges are really opportunities. So what new opportunities has your church taken during this pandemic? And did your church have to make any organizational changes to meet those challenges? So, what new opportunities are your churches doing right now that you weren't doing before? I'm not talking about the obvious, putting your services online, because obviously we were doing that before. But are there any other new opportunities that you saw through the pandemic? Pastor Garia?
Sure. I think the pandemic, and again, we want to acknowledge and not sort of, I want to acknowledge and not dismiss the suffering that people endured throughout the pandemic, whether it was physical suffering, economic suffering, but it did kind of present us with avenues to do sort of the things we were kind of wrestling with. How do we do before the pandemic? For example, small group ministries. We started small group ministries, and we realized that there were some things, there were some factors. If you know, Long Island is divided between two geographical counties, Suffolk and Nassau County, and we also have members coming in from Queens and Brooklyn and other parts of the city. So it kind of created this challenge for people to kind of get together with people they were comfortable with, to sustain a small group ministries. But now that we've kind of moved things online, we've gotten started with a book club that meets every 2 weeks, and it's a small group ministry that our church is excited about. I started a club with some of the men in our church, Knicks fans, longtime suffering Knicks fans. We'll come together, we'll fellowship together, we'll talk about the Knicks together on Zoom, so people don't feel inconvenienced. Nobody wants to come to somebody's house to talk about the Knicks, but you might get us closeted Knicks fans to jump on a Zoom call and pray together, fellowship together. And so these small groups, kind of interest groups, where you get to pray, you talk about what you've been going through, what you've been dealing with, but at the same time, we also talk about our interests.
Okay.
Interesting.
Well, you stated the obvious. We took our services online, but we were able to use this opportunity to evangelize the community. We haven't started small groups yet. I know that that's something that we're working on, but we were able to, not only through community assistance, create Bible study interest, but we were also able to put different programs online that were able to reach the community and grow our online following. For example, the Hope Awakens program, when they had that huge server outage, and that put the program online basically. Well, the following night, we were able to stream that on our own page, and people in our community that were looking for that found that. We were able to grow our average viewership from 20 people to over 700 people. And we were able, and that was something, that was really encouraging, and we were able to grow our online following through that. Another thing is with that Hope Awakens and the Take Charge of Your Health initiative, we had just started on YouTube this year before the pandemic, and we had just started streaming on there. We were able to grow our YouTube subscriber count from 0 to 400 in a month through this pandemic because of all the different things we were putting online. So that's one way that that's one of the new opportunities. You mentioned organizational changes. We didn't have to make any organizational changes per se. We included several people who had knowledge that were able to do things that normally we wouldn't be able to do by ourselves, and that allowed us to really branch out in some ways.
Okay, okay. Pastor Gary, I
I
forgot
like that.
to follow up with you. Did you have to do any organizational change? Did you have to bring anyone new in or rearrange the departments or anything like that?
Sure. First of all, I want to share the sentiments of the host and just say I am thoroughly amazed and impressed by the maturity of Mr. Given. You're inspiring me, young man. I just praise God for your giftedness and your willingness to
Yes.
serve. Organizational changes. Well, we're working with that right now. I plan to introduce to our board tomorrow grouping of ministries. What do I mean by that? Instead of having our traditional family life, men's ministries, women's ministries, singles ministries, I'd like to consolidate our ministries into four key groups, four groups. For example, online ministry, well, communications, music, and two other ministries I can't think of right now will be consolidated together. And then you'll have security, deacons, deaconesses, um, um, those type of ministries dealing with risk management, consolidate together, et cetera, et cetera. Because what I found is that people get burnt out really quickly with this.
Mm,
This
mm.
pandemic has really stretched us thin in our personal lives. And to expect for example, I'm just going to randomly call men's ministries leader or women's ministries leader to put on a program and by herself and kind of connect with people and try to reach people and pull them together for a program. If she's working together with the leaders that kind of their ministries sort of intersect, it makes things a lot easier. So that type of organizational restructuring we've worked with. And honestly, we have had to sort of establish the fact that our online ministries, Tiffany Daniel, will be playing a larger role than she had when we were in the building. She, in the
Mm.
beginning, was holding these weekly meetings that the entire board sort of came in on and allowed her to chair, allowed her to lead. And so that was a structural change that was different, but at the same time, it was absolutely necessary and it was a blessing to our church.
Wow, excellent,
Mm.
excellent.
Interesting. I want to go back. I want to go back to Sam's in his introduction. He mentioned that the church is back in the building now. I mean, I guess of course, social distancing or whatever. How has that impacted the virtual church?
Well, during the pandemic, we had a lot of engagement, a high amount of people watching our services. But now that people are going back to church, and even in our area, all of the area churches are back. Our engagement, our numbers have gone down as far as online numbers because there aren't as many people looking for these types of things because people are back in. Now we do have some people that are, at home, they're self-isolating, they're not comfortable coming to church. We were able to retain those numbers, but we weren't able to retain a lot of the people who were watching our services before. But we are able to, uh, trying to think of the right word. We were able to create more interest in our community. So we were able to create awareness in the community, but that hasn't transformed into uh, people coming to our church. Now we do have people because of the virtual services that we did watching from other areas that will probably never walk into our church. And we also
Right.
have people who are watching in the community. So, that's just something that, yeah.
Well,
Okay. Okay.
Dr. Henry, as Sam said, they literally went from 0 to 400
Yes.
very quickly. So
Yes.
obviously, it may not translate into bodies being in the building, but it does translate into interest, and I think
Mhm.
that's the next bridge that a lot of us have to figure out is how do we
Yes.
take these interests into warm bodies. But
Yes.
I think we got to be careful, guys. We got to make sure that is it the warm bodies we want, or is it? And I'm gonna leave that open ended.
Hey, that sounds like another show, Pastor Wade.
It sure does.
But you brought up something interesting, Pastor Wade. Just looking at those numbers, definitely, when you open up the building, there is a sense that the people that have been watching who are able to come, who want to come, will come, and they won't watch it back. They're not going to come to church and then watch it back. But there has to be a balance, I'm thinking. I'm thinking that we're getting to a time where church will open, but there has to be a balance. And it seems like this virtual church is making more impact. As far as the views, and of course, those views vary from what social media platform you're looking at, whether it's the 3 second, or the 7 seconds. But there got to be a balance in it. And so it's just, I'm going to follow this Cadillac church. I like the name, by the way, the Cadillac church, right? I'm going to follow the Cadillac church to kind of see how the numbers are trending with the virtual church. And maybe, they're like a forerunner to some of the other churches in the area who have not opened up. One of the things that I'm thinking about too is the amount of resources. I know that, again, this virtual church is something that is here to stay. Let's just face it, it is here to stay, and resources will be poured into it, and even more resources. But my question is, going back to Pastor Guerrier, how much time and coordination goes into this from week to week? And I think this will give our viewers just a sense of the type of obligation that we need to have as we look forward to increasing our numbers in the virtual church. So how much time goes into this?
Um, I'm also an attorney by trade, so I'm going to respond like an attorney to this question and say it depends. It depends. And it really depends on how smart you work. Initially, we found that we were working very hard and not necessarily smart. For
Mm,
example, we'd have people come in to offer up a prayer. Now, we've learned it's probably smarter to have them record 3 or 4 prayers right there on the spot that we can kind of have in our back pocket so that we're not scrambling if Tiffany's too busy to record one week, or we just don't have the capability schedule wise to record somebody praying, things like that. Training, I think, is something that we'll be establishing for those who would prefer to record from home, training them how to properly and appropriately set up their lighting, and if they're using a phone, to make sure that it is a phone that is appropriate in terms of quality for recording, if not using a camera. So it depends on how smart you work, just trying to make your time work for your church, and doing as much as you can while we are in the studio. We were able to turn our mother's room into a recording studio, and we kind of schedule people to come in, but we let them know, if you're going to come in, we're going to ask that you do more than one welcome today. And that
mm,
requires some coordination with what we're doing 2 months from now. We'll probably have that person also offer up a welcome that's suited for our program 2 months down the line. So initially, we were working a lot harder than we should have. And as we learned, as we went along, we were able to not only reaching out to pastors, but also just having these weekly meetings with one another, and that kind of helped us to figure out how we could work smarter and not as hard as we were initially.
Okay, that's good advice. I wish Sister Daniels was on, because I guess she can give us her perspective on it. Because I know that you were very adamant, for her to come on, because of the skills and what she does for your church. So hopefully we'll be able to get her on sometime throughout this discussion. How about you, Sam? I mean, you're working hard in your church, and how much time and effort do you bring into this, just you personally?
Me personally, well, now the workload isn't as much as it used to be. When we
Okay.
were fully online, it took the better part of 3 days just to get everything lined up and ready to go. And we had to
Wow.
keep, checking in with things throughout the Sabbath just to make sure things were going as scheduled, and, to schedule programs because, the plans that you pay for with different services, you can only schedule so many programs at a time. So, uh, it took probably, 3 or 4 days just to get everything lined up. And we would record Wednesdays, and our pastor would record his sermons on Fridays. We had some problems before with our pastor because he was moving from downstate Michigan to upstate here, northern Michigan, where the snow is white. And, it was really hard for him to get his sermons recorded in a timely manner, so he would get them to me at 2 a.m. sometimes
Mm.
Wow.
on Sundays. So that was a challenge, but once he was up here, it was much easier to do things. Coordination and resources, well, we learned to record things like, Pastor Reginald said, we learned to, record things, for a month in advance because like he said, you need to work smart, not hard, or,
Hmm.
you mean smart and hard at the same time. But, you know, we we learned to do that, and, we ironed things out with a lot of trial and error. And coordination, we had to include a lot of people just to make sure things got done. So it was a pretty coordinated movement, in my opinion, at least.
Mm. So a lot of people just donating their time. And
Mhm.
how about Pastor Guerrero? How about the resources, as far as monetary? I mean, did the budget stretch, and did more money go into this technology? I mean, you talk about buying cameras, you talk about how much. I mean, we don't need no specific figures, but did the finances, or did the board, um, were they open to this? And we don't want to put your board on the on the street, but was it hard? Was it a challenge for your members at the beginning to pour resources into this?
Not as much of a challenge for us. I think we had two key factors that worked in our favor. Our head elder is a nurse, and we had two other elders who are medical doctors and nurses. So they took the severity of the pandemic seriously. Um, we understood early on that this was going to be something that would be ongoing, and we couldn't
Hmm.
take lightly. And so we had to sort of transition totally online back in March or April. Another thing we had going for us is that um, our associate communications director is also our head treasurer, and
Okay.
so he was able to, with integrity, outline to our board, initially our finance committee, everything we
Mhm.
needed, and we decided we were going to be liberal about this. We're not going to come back and ask the board for more resources. So, as co-communications leader and also the treasurer, he was able to, with integrity, let us know exactly how much we needed to spend in order to have a robust um, presentation that our church primarily, I mean, yes, our primary focus as a church body is to evangelize, but our members wanted good content too. Our members wanted to see our praise team every Sabbath too. And so their representatives on the board were open to the fact that if we're going to do this, if we're going to enjoy um, our um, our services that we were used to for X amount of years here at Bethany, we're going
Hmm.
to have to open up to this. So we had two key things going for us. I'm not sure other churches have the same experience. Namely, our treasurer is a very active part of our communications team, and also secondly, I can't remember my second point, but I think I was pretty clear about that.
Right, right, right. Interesting. And it's always good to have your treasurer on board, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Sorry, yeah. We had medical personnel on our leadership elders team who realized we needed to shut down. No playing around with this. Let's transition online.
all right, that's good. I love it. I love it. And when you have that team, how large is the team? I mean, I know everyone is involved, right? The board and but how large is your technology team? Like the ones that uh, do the camera and the computer and the coaching on how to stand and the lighting and all that. How large is your team?
Sure. Internally, we have about a 4 to 5 member communications team, but we've
Okay.
also given them the latitude to seek outside help, to retain sometimes, or to solicit the help and expertise of individuals outside of our congregation. We have had to pay people from the interior, from the exterior, to come in and help put things together. Um, Particularly when we have our live, well, our recorded praise set in house with the entire praise team on hand with our band. And you can imagine it takes several cameras, several personnel to come in and make sure that that production is up to par. And so for those situations, we've had to borrow help outside of our communications team. But for the most part, we have about 5, maybe 6 individuals that comprise our tech, substance, content, recording, communications team.
Mm. Yeah. All right. Interesting. And how about you, Sam? What's your team like? How many people in the team?
Now it's me, our pastor, and my communications director. So that's 3 people.
Oh my.
Before
Okay.
During COVID, we had about 6 people just, helping put things together. I should mention that we were also putting together the church service for our sister church in our district, which, that we also had to make sure they had church because they didn't have the resources, so we partnered with them and did a joint service and helped put it out through all their outlets too. So we were doing 2 at a time, but we had about 6 people. I think there were a couple people from our sister church, and the rest of us were from Cadillac. So it was a decent sized team. Sometimes I wish we had more, but
Right, right, right. But you know what? One thing that I'm impressed, about all of our guests today. I join with Pastor Guerrero. I'm impressed with you as you are involved in church. I mean, you're involved in trying to make sure that the mission continues. So I am really impressed with you. And I know I'm going to share this with Pastor Guerrero and Pastor Wade. We would love to have you at our church, right? And put you to
Yeah,
work.
So
yeah.
listen, guys,
But
listen. We're really sorry that we're missing Tiffany's input here, but as we look at look at the research that's out there, the COVID-19 pandemic has made technology essential to collective religious life. There was a time when technology wasn't too liked by church. I remember when the cell phone began to have its prominence. Pastors would say from the pulpit, "Turn it off, turn it off. You can't use it while we're in church." Live stream services, viewed from home, all are the new normal. What are some dangers in the exclusive virtual church, if any? Now that you've gone through this virtual, what are some of the things that you will consider dangers, or things that you see is problematic in doing virtual church?
Sure.
Anyone? Sam, why don't you jump in, Sam, if you can?
Ooh, well, that is a tough question. When you're doing something, you don't normally look for the dangers. You look for the benefits, and sometimes you overlook the dangers, and that can cause problems down the road. I think one of the dangers is that you aren't able to communicate with that person that's watching your service exclusively. You aren't able to visit with them after church and say, "How are you? How are you doing? Are you going to join us again? How did you find us?" You aren't able to do that because they're not in person, they're online, and sometimes you aren't able to cultivate those people. I think another danger is you have to make sure you're not doing too much. There's a balance. If you do too little, you can, you cannot, you can have too little, but if you have too much, you won't have the engagement and the reach that you'll normally have. So I think one of the dangers is doing too much. I know there are churches that go live every hour, every single day. And, I would be careful to say that's doing too much because everybody's situation is different, but you can't do too much. So I think those are the two dangers. Another thing is when you're using kids, just be careful with kids and with parents because sometimes parents aren't they don't like having their kids on video in front of a church. That could be for different reasons. Some of them are just being too worried, but you have to worry. That's one of the things you have to worry about kids. And another thing is that you have to worry about coming too perfectionist because if you're throwing out good content because that somebody recorded for your church service because they didn't use just the right camera or the right camera angle or anything of that nature, that's also a danger. You can get too perfectionist. So
Mm.
those are the dangers that I think that's some people need to worry about.
Oh, wow, wow, interesting
Wow,
comments.
I
Those
like I
comments.
like his insight, Pastor Wade. I
Yeah.
like that insight. The danger of being a perfectionist. That's a word right
I'm telling you. I'm
there.
gonna tell you. I'm telling you, Pastor Gary. What dangers do you see in this virtual church?
Yeah, sure. I want to address something that was mentioned earlier, and that will inform my response to this question. We talked a lot about investing the money for the technology, really offset by the fact that a lot of our ministries just could not meet and be as active as they were. And let's just face it, some ministries just sort of kind of, I don't want to say die, but were dormant during COVID.
Mm,
Pathfinders, for example, is just no one is allowing their kids to meet in the church with a pathfinders director, and so those ministries, for lack of better terms, weren't using as much of the resources and the expenses that we were kind of accustomed to, and so it was natural that some of those resources were extended to our communications department. So it wasn't like we were spending more money than before, due to the fact that most of our churches, most of our ministries, a lot of our ministries rather, were simply not using as much of the resources. So, but the danger is that there was, at some points, a sense of, you know, um, non-involvement from some of your leaders who were involved and kind of very active in the church. We would notice that at some points it'd be difficult to get us motivated and get us to realize, listen, we're still in this. You may not be doing what you were doing before, but we still want you to be a part of the conversation in terms of ministry content. We'd like you to put a afternoon program together. So there was this sense that, okay, well, since my ministry isn't functioning as it had been in the past, I can kind of disappear and sort of take a break and be ministered to. So that was one of the dangers that we can fall into. I realized was this sense of non-engagement, non-involvement from key leaders.
mm.
Mm, wow. So
That's
so
interesting.
so one of our viewers shared that they kind of pointed out that there was a difference in the way regional churches or black churches responded and Caucasian churches responded, and obviously we do have a church from each of those genres here, or each of those population. Do you find in your sphere, does do you find what was shared, which was the fact that maybe the black churches were a little slow in responding to going online, um, but based on what I'm sensing from the story I heard, both of y'all were kind of caught off guard in terms of getting online. So I don't know how true that is to kind of generalize everything. But do you find that culture played a role in your response to going online or stepping up your game in this venue?
Pastor?
Yeah. For us, I mean, Pastor Wade knows Bethany is sort of a unique church in our conference. It's one of the youngest churches in terms of demographics in the Northeastern Conference, and so we probably didn't have as hard of a time getting people to buy in to this new mode of church. And I think also what helped is that people like Tiffany were placed in unique leadership roles in the church. She mentioned that she's a project manager. We decided
Yeah.
to refurbish our mother's room. Tiffany Daniel led that project. And when we saw the fruit of her giftedness, her mind, her creative mind, um, although she was one of the quieter members in our church, we saw what she could do. And that kind of opened up the avenue for her to be trusted to lead this ministry. So I think Bethany may be a not as good of an example, but the generalization, Pastor Wade, I think is fair. I think that our more traditional um, uh, sort of black churches, West Indian in particular, may have it may have taken a little more nudging for us to buy in. But Bethany just happens to be a very unique church, as you know.
Mm-hmm. Sam,
Let me
Sam,
ask you this. Let me ask a question to Pastor Guri, and then we go to Sam. Have other churches in your area, I mean, just reached out to you and asked, what are you doing? How are you doing it? Especially among our churches as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had many pastors reach out to me and ask if they could talk to Tiffany, if she can. My thing is, listen, as long as it doesn't take away from what she's doing here, sure. So we've definitely had that. Now, in terms of putting it all together, the technical aspect, that's the communications team. Honestly, I've just been blessed by a wonderful eldership team, leadership team that has allowed me to allow them to flourish. So when people call me, like for example, when you called me, Pastor Henry, I said, listen, I can talk a little bit, you know, about the content, but in terms of how to put it together, we have to get our communications leader here with us. She's
Yeah,
she's
and
having
I
some
just
technical difficulties now, which is ironic
okay.
because she's a wonderful communications leader. She's awesome at tech, but she said she'll try to connect at some point.
Okay, and listen, you're blessed to have Sister Daniels in the church. Wow, what a talent that she has in coordinating some of this stuff and making Bethany what it is. And by the way, I know what Pastor Wade, I think you had a question or so before we get there. Listen, viewers, you gotta check out the Bethany Church. You just gotta do it. Go to the website, and they have a phenomenal virtual church. And when you all go back to this in-person church, I don't know how it's gonna look. Don't stop that virtual church. Please don't stop it because
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. I won't be able to tune in if you stop it. So I'm in Florida, right? So Pastor Wade, I think you had a
yeah,
question
I
there.
was I was actually wanting to see if Sam had any insight into the cultural issue that we brought up in terms of moving the church from um, going online or going virtual. I don't know if he has any insight to share with us on that.
We didn't have any cultural problems going online. There was a lot of I will say this: there was a lot of people who think it was a mistake to go online,
Mm,
uh,
Mm.
just because there are people who, you call them the pew warmers, the people who are going to church but aren't they aren't believing, or they're believing but they're not strong. So we've lost some people that just aren't coming back because of that. And some people think it was a bad mistake to close. But there isn't a lot of a culture of this. So I know somebody mentioned that uh, black churches were usually late when it comes to innovation. I disagree. You just search everywhere online in the Seventh Day Adventist Church even, and you can find churches that maybe are majority black churches that have great technology that they use, sometimes better than we use, and a
mm.
lot of times even much better than we use. And there are a lot of churches that are black churches that have never that have not been late. But I disagree with that. There's a lot of good people that keep those things running in those churches.
Awesome, awesome. Well,
Wow.
thank you for that
Awesome.
insight, man. You are truly
Listen,
showing your maturity, man. I'm telling
Yeah.
you.
Sam. Listen, I'm gonna wear a shirt that says "Go Sam, go." I don't know. I love some Sam, man. I love some Sam. I love some Sam.
Dr. Henry,
Um,
we have we have a question that has been assigned to you, but this chat here, or this post
I'm looking
may
right
be
here.
dealing with it. It says simply,
Ooh,
what are your
ooh,
suggestions
good
for
question.
promoting various ministry involvement during this online season as a result of the pandemic? It seems that we are missing many of our young adults. Now that we are not in the building, folks are not showing up. So what are some suggestions? I think that might lead you into the next question. Anyone?
Well, when you are talking to the group as a whole, if you're addressing a whole church, that isn't personal. It's not going to have the same effect that as if you were to connect with them personally. So you have to connect with them personally. Ask them why they're not coming. Why aren't they showing up? Is there a reason why they're not showing up? Pre-COVID, you could call somebody who wasn't showing up to church and say, "Hey, how are you doing? Why aren't you at?" So maybe that's a bit rude. Why aren't you at church? But you notice you aren't at church, and they'd say, "Well, I fell and I broke my hip or something." Now you aren't necessarily able to do that. So if you need to connect with somebody, and you need to connect with them and speak with them personally. It doesn't matter if it's in person or over the phone, but having that contact with somebody is definitely going to help. Um,
Yeah. I think some of the more common practical things. For example, when something we do is we send out a newsletter every week to kind of let people know what's going on. And by the way, if anyone wants to check out the Bethany Church, please leave your email in the description box so that we can have you on our list to receive our weekly newsletter. But I think in terms of keeping young adults engaged, what I have found, and I need to do a better job of this, is that church, more so than before, for young adults, they want it to be an extension of what's going on in the world from Monday through Friday. For
mm,
example, if you weren't discussing George Floyd when that happened, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, um, no matter where you fit in the political spectrum, we can agree that it has been a sort of very polarizing political atmosphere, and as a result, young adults have taken more interest. Young Seventh Day Adventists have taken more interest in social, political, legal issues of the day, and they're seeing the Jesus that was concerned about socioeconomic issues. And if the church isn't discussing those things or creating an avenue for people to kind of share, how those things impact their lives, the lives of their community, the people in their communities from Monday through Friday. They're just not going to be engaged on Saturday unless Saturday is an
mm.
extension of what communities are dealing with and experiencing throughout the week. It's not the end all be all, but that's one, I think, key aspect. Our young adults are far more engaged within their spirituality, their religious life, far more engaged with what's going on societally.
And so
I
you
just
have
wanna,
like doing this. Go ahead, Sam.
I just want to say something. You mentioned social issues, and that brings back a lot of thoughts to me because, like you said, those are really polarizing issues. And I just want to offer a word of caution when you're discussing social issues. This depends a lot on the demographic of your church. What people or how people are in your church. And for a church like mine, that wouldn't go over well to be focused on social issues like that.
Yeah,
Uh, it really depends on the demographic of your church, but you've got to be really careful with social issues because there are people who will twist that and turn that into saying, "Oh, you're for one party or you're for one type of system or whatever."
yeah,
And then there'll be the other people say, "Oh, you're not for this," or "You're definitely not for this. Oh, terrible." That's just something you got to be careful with. So that's just
yeah.
something I thought.
No, absolutely, Sam. Your caution is well taken.
Yeah. During this pandemic, we've seen the increase, I think, in a lot of churches of the engagement from our young adults. They're chiming in, they're, in the chat. How do you see this trending? Because again, we're talking about a lot of people wanting to get back to in-person church. Do you think that engagement, I think you hit on some of those things, Pastor Guerrero, you think that engagement will continue and how can it continue with our young adults as far as their participation in church and just their engagement in church?
Sure. I don't know what the future in building church will look like. I do think there are some of our ministries that for the foreseeable future will not be part of our in building um, experience. For example, maybe prayer meeting for a lot of our churches. I can see a lot of our churches who are experiencing increased numbers and attendance during prayer meeting, um, on the Zoom. I can see, particularly here in the Northeast, to come to church on a Wednesday night, and there are 10 people here, 15 maybe, that we're keeping the lights and the heat on for in the middle of the winter when we can be on a Zoom call and experience more engagement. I think those type of in-church ministries for the foreseeable future, we may see them not be part of the church in the building. In terms of keeping people engaged, now we're on a topic of young adults, and Sam's advice was well taken. We have to be careful. But the question was with respect to the young adults that we want to continue to keep engaged in our church. I know in our context, to see Christ in his engagement with people and their needs. Um, People who were social outcasts, people who were dismissed, or people who were what we call the least of these,
Hmm.
or exploited in one way or another by Roman authority. That Jesus increasingly is being studied by our young adults. And if the church is going to have their engagement moving forward, the church has to be engaged, not politically. We're not talking about which political candidates to support and so on and so forth, but in terms of being engaged on how perhaps policies affect people. I was the other day, we were talking about, we were engaged in a discussion, and someone asked, um, why is it that we can pray for people to get healthy, or we can pray for people who are probably perhaps maybe incarcerated unjustly, but yet the church does not get involved in the issue of mass incarceration, criminal justice, or healthcare. It
Mm.
just doesn't make sense on the back end to pray about those things, but not be involved in the discussion on the front end. So those are some of the conversations young adults are having. And if the church is not at least given them an opportunity, a platform to engage in them, they'll engage in those critical discussions elsewhere.
Wow. And you're actually answering the question, another question, follow-up question I want to ask about two things that could improve engagement in the local congregation. Um, I think that is something that needs to be addressed. How can we engage participation? And I think in some context, you're right. Social justice and things that are, being an advocate for social justice, and some things that are taking place, just mentioning it, praying about it, and being involved in local community activities and events, I think keeps people engaged. Now let's talk about this virtual church, because again, you all have been doing such an awesome job in keeping that virtual church present. So what are two things that we can do as churches that can improve our virtual presence? Sam?
Well, that's a tough question. You have to experiment a little bit because it all depends on the demographic of your community. How different things are, different events, it really depends on your church. It's very specific. But I can say one thing is that you need to create content, because there are a lot of churches who don't create content. So I guess that's a really basic tip, but it's one that you probably, you need to take to heart. You need to create content that people will watch. If people aren't watching something, then your virtual presence isn't going to grow. So you need to. And another thing, I'm trying to remember. I had this all written down, and then I don't have the paper with me. Another thing is that you need to make sure that you are targeting the people in your community. If you are, targeting the whole United States, you're not going to your audience in your community, it isn't going to benefit you directly. You need to target your community. You need to target demographic in your community. For example, if your community is mostly one race or something like that, and if your church is mostly one race, you can do different things because there are cultural differences. You can uh, do your marketing in such a way that it targets their culture. So you have to target your community and your demographic.
Good points. How about you, Pastor Guerrero?
Yeah, Sam raised a very good point. Content, just changing your content, adding new content, and it's maybe a period of trial and error initially as you're trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. One thing that we talked about doing, for example, is to add a segment in our service where we have a round table. No pun intended, gentlemen. A round table where people discuss the sermon. People discuss what they heard and how it they could practically use what they heard in their own personal lives. Again, we are I'm speaking specifically to Bethany, a younger church. We are in a generation where folk like to not just hear something, but kind of share in the discussion and the engagement and contextualize it. I think is the word I'm looking for. So we want to add a segment where people kind of talk and contextualize what they heard in the Word after our sermon.
Interesting. I like that. Just the other day I heard of a story where there was one pastor, because of this the virtual presence and trying to create content, he just said, listen, we're just going to, together on Zoom, we're going to find a church and we're going to listen to the message. And then after the message, we'll get on Zoom and we'll discuss the message. That's what we'll do. And
Yeah.
I think the pastor
That's
provided
a
some
great
good
idea.
congregation
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. And I think I think
Right.
also what I noticed that people like to see what you're doing, not only hear what you're saying. So providing content where you show them a snippet of what you're doing in the community, the type of services you're doing evangelistically or community service wise, that type of content. Other than you're singing, you're preaching, and you're
And
praying,
that's it.
what you're doing, yeah, it can be really attractive to people, not only in terms of getting them to engage by watching, but also to want to be part of what's going on. These folk are actually out there. We had a prayer walk, prayer march with our police officers in our community on the wake of the George Floyd incident, where
Yes.
the police chief was with us, so on and so forth. And we kind of shared some of that online, and it generated interest in our church ministry overall.
That's excellent. And I know Pastor Wade has a question he wants to ask there, but let me just say this. You know, when people see what the church is doing in the community, they feel more a part of it, they feel more engaged, and usually the finances go up because people give more when they see what's happening. I'm
Yeah,
I had a book, reading a book called "It's Not Your Parents' Offering Plate," and what that book is saying is that the people of our generation, let's just face it, they're not giving like
yeah,
the generation before us.
yeah,
They're giving based on what they see the church doing in the
yeah,
community. And
yeah.
so I think you're on the right path with your church.
Yeah, yeah,
Praise
we're
God.
we're just excited. I think that's a lot of people are saying standout churches, and sometimes we think it has to be the church that's making the big noise or is seen across. But we want to make sure that we understand that the standout is not necessarily standout nationally, but standout in your community. I want to make sure that we make that point because most of our churches in North America, particularly, are small churches, medium-sized small churches, and some people feel you need to have a big church with a lot of personnel and budget to be a standout church. But I think we found two best kept secrets, if you please, best kept secrets. So listen, I just want to get a little bit of the secret sauce. I know we have some communicators, communication leaders listening, looking for ideas as to what goes into the secret sauce. I'm gonna start with Sam. Sam, you shared with me a number of things you're doing. One of them being writing a press kit, and you have a couple of them on your website.
Mhm.
And the Lake Union Herald, who are watching here today, they put all your business out in the street, talking about the impact you had in connecting with the community and being interviewed by the local press and things like that. What did that do for ministry in your local context, and what can churches do to make that happen? What's the secret sauce in getting to have an interview with your local community paper or community television station?
Well, the first thing I'd encourage you to do is learn how to write a press release. If you can't write, get somebody to write for you. Because some people they can't write, and that's them. But you need to have somebody to write a press release for you, and you can go anywhere and find out online how to write a press release, how to write an article. You
So
start with the
Sam,
who.
before you continue, Sam, I'm gonna be just like my co-host who's not here today. He would stop our guests sometimes and ask this a very pointed question: Why would a church need a press release?
Because that is the key to getting you in the media.
Mm.
That's how anybody, even secular companies, that's how they tell the press what they are doing. They write up a press release with the basics of who, what they're doing, when they're doing it, and why they're doing it. They put that in a rudimentary article format, and they send that to the media. You might have several media outlets, or you might have one media outlet. Just send it to all of them, and then learn how to or follow up with the press. Call them a couple days later and say, "Hi, my name is such and such, and I'm from such and such church, and we sent you a press release about this event, and we just wanted to follow up on that." And sometimes they'll go, well, I didn't get your press release, or, well, we're not interested this time. But other times they'll say, we are really interested in this. And that's also another key is following up. When you send something, follow up. When a journalist asks a question and they don't answer it in just the way they wanted it, they follow up with a more pointed question. Another thing is I encourage to meet with your local media. Cultivate or get a relationship with them started. Meet the editor or the news director. Say who you are, what you're doing, and just get acquainted with them.
Mm.
And that helped us a lot with the local newspaper in our area, and we've gotten a lot of help from them. And that's one part. Another part is to make sure you have okay, there before I go on to the next part of my answer, is there any thing with that?
No, no, you're doing good.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Sam. Sam, we're listening to you, Sam.
Hey, we're
We're
taking
listening
notes.
to
We're
you.
taking notes.
We're taking notes. We're taking notes.
The first thing, the next thing you need to do is to make sure you have a website that is updated.
Come on.
If your website is only updated once a month or once every year, that's not going to help at least your online development any. You need to make sure that you have a webmaster that keeps the website engaging. It has important information that people want to know. And you need to keep your website updated, promote your website, put information on there that people will want to look for. If you announce everything from the pulpit, nobody's going to go to your website. But if you say, I have something, or if you say, we're doing such and such a date, find out more information on our website, somebody will go to your website and they will find out about that. And the next thing is to make sure you have somebody to manage your social media channel well. And you also have to make sure you are where the people are. If you are in, there's a lot of these social media upshoots. They're called like MeWe or another one. I can't remember the name. If that's not where the people are right now, you need to be where the people are, and you need to make sure that you are putting out content. Like we put out on Mondays, Monday motivation posts, where it's a Bible quote that's encouraging, and on Wednesday we have Healthy Wednesdays, where we give a health tip. And I think the next thing is you need to make sure that your church is on board with you. You need to, make sure you have a good relationship with your church. Make sure that people are sharing your services with the community, with their friends, sending them to different people. Make sure that they are sharing your posts, that they are also looking at your posts. Sometimes churches have a challenge with their members looking at their posts. So those are just a few things. And some things, you have to be some things that I don't have that are specific to your church. So you also have to make sure that you are working with your church as a whole. So
Awesome. Excellent. Great ideas. As you saw, the chat is just filled with appreciation for for what you're sharing. Pastor Gary, what are some things you can share with us? I know you're more on the administrative side, but as the leader, what are some of the things you can share with us that will help some churches stand out?
Sure. I think allow your gifted people to lead. Um, Organizational restructuring is going to be very important. Um, some people who were used to, a certain type of leadership role in a different context may have to take a step back for this type of ministry. It doesn't mean that they're sitting down, but we're just allowing untapped, gifted talent to take the forefront and do what they do best to allow your church to flourish and to look good. So some tough conversations have to happen, and there are some people who you may have to have a one-on-one with and say, "Listen, I know that you were used to kind of manning this side of things, whether it's prayer or anything else, but because we are now doing things digitally, we kind of need someone else to step in and take a leadership role. We'd love for you to work with that individual." So difficult conversations may have to be had, but I think it's very important to not be afraid to have the tough conversations and to do what is necessary kind of organizationally and structurally to allow your church to flourish.
mhm.
Wow. Well, that's a good comment. I could already see that you are an exceptional leader, exceptional leader. I mean, just being able to pour into your people and allowing gifted people to lead. People who are viewing today, I think we got to take some notes here. Allow gifted people to lead.
Mm,
And when you do that, your church will flourish.
that's right.
Thank you, Pastor Greer. Thank you, Sam. You know what? I am. We were missing a critical part of our program. I wish Pastor Paul was here to chime into this conversation. So you know what, Pastor Wade, we may have to do this again with the same guests and bring Pastor Paul back on because I know that he would definitely love to enjoy the conversation between our two guests here. We want to again, thank you for Sister Daniels, Tiffany Daniels, as well. We would love to hear more from her, and so we got to meet up with her at some time and bring her on and see what we can do so that our churches can be effective in this season.
Yes, yes. So we want to take up Pastor Garrier's offer. If you would like to get on their mailing list, make sure you put your name and your email in the chat so that they will get that information and you can start getting some information from the Bethany Seventh-day Adventist Church. And also, if you go over to the Cadillac Seventh-day Adventist Church and get on their mailing list, they right on their website, they grab your email right at the beginning, so that you can begin to see. I mean, their website is amazing. It's simple but crisp, and I want you to know, very relevant to the season and to the issues that are happening in today. So I want those two churches, standout churches. But we have some other churches that are doing great jobs.
Oh yeah, phenomenal things.
I just want to point out that right now, this afternoon, the Linwood Temple Seventh-day Adventist Church in Kansas City, they are doing a bike giveaway, and they have 100 bikes that they're giving away to their community through their food pantry program. And so we want to acknowledge the Linwood Temple Seventh-day Adventist Church there in Kansas City. We also want to share with you that the Pacific Union, today again, they are doing a bike giveaway also. They have 170 bikes that they're going to be giving away to the community. The local radio station and TV station picked that up, and so they're coming to the giveaway this afternoon. And so that is something very special there in Stockton, California. And so we're excited about these local churches that are standing out. They're doing some great things, and they're utilizing communications and ways to share with the community. And I just want to challenge all of you out there that what you're planning, what you're doing, whether it be a health expo or even if it's an evangelistic program, I just want you to know that the community needs to hear about it. The community needs to know about it. Our co-host, Pastor Paul, is going into evangelism at his church online, virtually, starting on tomorrow. Pastor Henry, Dr. Henry, who's here with us, he just finished an online evangelism program. And so those are some things that the community can be a part of and gain some benefits from. So there's so many things that are happening in all of our churches. There are churches that are making their parking lot available for drive-through COVID testing. There are churches that are making some of their technology available so that people can in the community can benefit from the information and the knowledge. And I think Pastor Guerrier mentioned that in his church he has doctors and nurses who were able to help guide the church, but they were able to help guide the community. And so we're excited about what God has done, seeding within his church talented people
Yes.
that can make a difference. And so we're excited here at the Pastors Roundtable for what God is doing to our churches, standout churches here in this day and age. Dr. Henry.
Amen. Yeah. So listen, again, appreciate our guests. Next week, Pastor Wade, what's happening next week?
Listen, it's Christmas. We're excited. The special time
That's
of
right.
the year. Saturday is going to be the day after Christmas. In some countries, it's called Boxing Day. But here at the Pastors Roundtable, we were kind of toying. Should we have a live show or not? And I think we will have a live show next week, and it's gonna be a special show. You don't want to miss next week's show. As we shared this week with Standout Churches, next week we're gonna do something very special for you, our viewers. You want to make sure you're part of the Pastors Roundtable viewers on next week here at the time that we normally start 3:00.
All right. Well, you heard it. Next week, we think we'll have. But guess what? Listen, we thank you for joining the Pastors Roundtable. Rod, let's see if we can end this thing right.
Yeah, we can. We just got to be ready. We can. So
we got to be ready.
So listen, guys, we are so thankful that you are here joining us at the Pastors Roundtable, where we aim to keep ministry relevant, resourced,
and real.
All righty. God be praised.